MCAS Explained Part 8, and this is where we talk about the GI tract and how it's affected. If you like these videos, let me know any topics you want me to talk about or expand upon. I would love to dive into it. So before we've talked about with the feedback loop, now your gut is a big piece of that feedback loop. You have an intestinal lining, and below the intestinal lining, you have an epithelial layer of cells. Below the epithelial layer of cells, you have something called your mast cell. That one layer of epithelial cells separates your GI tract, which holds trillions of bacteria, your food particles, the food proteins, the infectious bacteria, and all the things that happen in the GI tract, and your mast cells in your immune system. So if that barrier in that intestine gets damaged or irritated, it's very easy to actually get access to that mast cell. And so as that barrier opens, the mast cells can react. But here's the other crazy part. The mast cells can actually go in and open that barrier even further, creating more intestinal permeability. One of those chemicals the mast cell releases is called tryptase. Now, tryptase will actually bind to a receptor within the intestinal walls, creating that gap. Now, the bigger that gap gets, the more the mast cells will react, the more the intestinal permeability occurs. Intestinal permeability means that those cells that are tightly jammed together to protect the body start opening up and creating a barrier that is no longer existent and openings in that barrier for things to slip through. This is where that feedback loop can start. It starts with that barrier getting opened up. Now all of a sudden things are slipping through and getting access to that mast cell. That mast cell then releases tryptase, then opens up the barriers even more, which allow more things to slip in, which then stimulate your mast cells even further. And the mast cells release more histamine, more tryptase. The more that occurs, the more you have inflammation, the more your intestines are inflamed, the more swollen they get, the more bloated you get. Just overall, the worse this whole feedback loop gets, your intestinal permeability gets worse, your histamine clearance gets worse, and your body just feels like it's an overall falling apart. And that's why I don't just like looking at MCAS as a histamine reaction, because there's so much more than just histamine react. Then we look at the environment and we say, okay, now the environment's giving the mast cells reason to fire off. Knowing what we know about the GI tract and how it affects the vagus nerve in the body, it also, stress can react a lot within this, and human research has actually shown corticotropin releasing hormone will stimulate the intestinal permeability through that mast cell dependent mechanism. In simple English, your gut, your stress, your brain all affect this. They are not three separate situations. They're actually one conversation happening with three different. Now to bring back what we were talking before with damaged tissue and releasing that IL-33. That IL-33 can make that mast cell more reactive to other immune stimulus as well. Now you have an immune system stress telling the body that there's a damaged barrier, which then dictates more response from the immune system, which creates a lot of those inflammatory cytokines. Those mast cells, which is supposed to be responding to that danger, is now creating the very problem that it's trying to react to, which is that intestinal permeability, which means that mast cell is now creating the environment that in that intestinal permeability is where foods start accumulating, those responses to foods accumulate. So you might have a food on Monday, it not react with you, but on Friday it does, because that intestinal permeability is way worse. Your histamine buildup is there, and now the mast cells are screaming for help. And so the big question is, why am I not allergic to this food today and it was before, or vice versa? It's not so much about the food, but it's about your immune system's response to it. So then it becomes about what's affecting that gut microbiome. Is it a microbiome issue? Is it a bacterial issue? Is it a parasitic issue? Is it a barrier issue? And so if all that's occurring, how can we help support the body? How can we change what's happening internally? How can we make sure that the gut microbiome, the environment in there, isn't just stimulating a huge mast cell response?